YOLO amazing people of YouTube. Today I want to put on the tinfoil hat and I want to cover a topic, and I want you to stick with me because it's kind of a very important topic, and I'm gonna deliver it in a very unique way, man. So in terms of media, and I'm talking about all media, whether it be music, video games, movies, whatever, right? Online, offline, whatever. We've all heard the saying, art depicts reality, or sometimes reality depicts art, right? With the tinfoil hat on, man, let's just assume that art depicts reality. And I'm going to give certain examples here and there to prove my point, okay? Like, if you're into video games, right? Did you know that the first time the United States actually showed what the Black Project F-117, that plane, the first time they showed it to the public was through a video game? Did you guys know that? One of our most top secret planes we've ever made, the first time they ever showed it was in a video game, man. Now, I'm an individual that notices minute details in things that most people just overlook. In terms of symbols, in terms of like, I don't know why I'm that way, but I am that way. I notice little details that a lot of people, it kind of flies over their head. So in terms of movies, let's just say, for argument's sake, stick with me on this, that movies actually depict a certain reality. They might take that reality and put some artistic measure to it, but for the most part, whatever it is that you're watching, it's real. It really happened. There's a real aspect to it. It's based on reality. It's based on real science. It's based on newfound science. It's based on communication between countries. It's based on communication between secret societies. It's based on sharing information between the initiated. So if you take like a really well-made movie, let's say The Matrix, let's say Fight Club, let's say whatever great movie you think of, right? That was the acting phenomenal, picture phenomenal, audio phenomenal, writing phenomenal, like those movies, right? I'm not talking about like the Mickey Mouse ass movies. All those movies, they kind of hit a button in us, right? And they hit a button because there's a lot of reality depicted in the background. So let's say if you're just some random person that just likes movies, you might watch, let's say, Fight Club, and it's about just some guy that, you know, he creates Fight Club, and then you find out he has a mental illness, right? But that movie has layer after layer after layer after layer. It touches on psychology. It touches on the modern problem the average man is facing and going to face, right? That movie is not new. It depicted the problems we were going to have before the problems even arose, before anyone really caught hint or smelled any smoke to even notice a fire. And that's not the only movie that's done that. So, like I said, movies have layers, right? So, in the background, there might be so much information, and you notice it. If you were to really watch a movie, like actually watch a movie, You notice that a lot of movies, man, they're really fucking deep. And I'll give you another perfect example, man. Guy Ritchie, who was married to Madonna, right? Guy Ritchie makes some amazing movies. He has a movie called Revolver. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But there's really minute details in that movie that no one really pays attention to. For example, the movie starts off and he says, you know, there's a con artist next to me in one cell and a chess master in the other, and I'm stuck between them. Therefore, I see the information they're sharing. And they believe they found the method to win the ultimate game. And if you look at the books that they're showing, so there's another scene where he hands the two dudes money, and one of the dudes is sitting on Pussy from Sopranos. He's sitting like on a couch, and there's books next to him. If you freeze frame that scene and you read the types of books, you're talking about like astrophysics, volume 3 or something like that. You're talking about nanotechnology or whatever. It's some wild books based on physics. There's another part where Andre 2000 or 3000, he holds up money and he goes, you know, I love the fresh smell of new money, and he's showing you money, but it's actually a $2 bill that's never existed. And that means something. It means a lot. It's not a coincidence that he showed you, like they've created an entire $2 bill. So most people don't realize that we have the $1 bill, 5, 10, 20, 100, right? But there's a 500, 1,000, 100,000, 1 million, 10 million, and a bunch of bills in between that most people have no idea that the United States dollar is not just, you know, your dollar, 5, 10, 20, 100. There's more to it. Most people don't even realize that we actually have two forms of currency. We have one we call the United States dollar, and we have the other one called United States cents, like 25 cents, 10 cents. Not a lot of countries have two types of money. We do. Now, that movie really dives in, and there's so much subliminal messaging in that movie, and there's so many layers, and they kind of show it as, at the end of the movie, if you've ever watched it, they kind of like really jump into, oh, this movie was about the ego that we all have, and this. But if you watch the movie, it had nothing to do with the fucking ego. It had nothing to do with the ego. that was like for the average dumb person watching that didn't get the movie. They're like, all right, just tell them it's about the ego, right? That movie was a lot deeper than the ego, because you had like Pussy when he gives them the card and it says, you know, take the elevator, and then he has another card that says pick me up, and then, you know, he shows up and miraculously saves his life when he should have fucking died. And then you have him stuck between floor 12 and 14, because most skyscrapers don't have, I wonder who won. Most skyscrapers don't have a 13th floor. There's so much information there, right? And the fact that the ultimate game to win it, right? And it says, they even mention this thing, you know, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing you he doesn't exist. And what they're referring to is the voice in your head. And how Mr. Gold wouldn't even fuck with these dudes, because they knew the formula. They knew what was up. They were initially like Neo in the Matrix. They found out the code and how to be like Superman within our physical limits. They found new limits to reality, right? They found that reality can be warped to a certain degree. He went from having a terminal illness that he was gonna die within 3 days, and just hanging around with those two dudes, just giving away his money, and then it turns out it was a mistake. He wasn't going to die, right? But he really was gonna die otherwise. And when they broke out of jail, they told him, we'll take you with me. And then later on, they tell him, like, you just weren't ready at that time, because it wasn't a physical prison they were going to break him out of. That prison was within his head. It's in his mind, right? The prison we all create for ourselves through all the programming we've had since birth. So all these movies, man, they show so much information, right? And stick with me, keep the tinfoil hat going for argument's sake, right? Like, let's say all these movies are depicting realities or an artistic rendering of reality. So when you talk about things like Iron Man and the Iron Man suit, you think since World War II we haven't tried to develop Iron Man suits? We haven't tried to create the super soldier, Captain America, right? And these are just Marvel comics, dude. If you watch the movie Logan, right, which was the most realistic X-Men movie they made, Logan, right? Because it was the one that was based the most in reality. It wasn't this teenage movie. They didn't have all these youngsters in it. It was about real problems. What would happen if Wolverine really existed? He would be fucked up in a lot of ways, right? And the kid is telling them, no, in the comic books it says these are the coordinates. We need to get to Canada. Now, in World War II, the United States made maps, and they printed them on inside of vinyl records, just in case prisoners get caught, like during war, and they get sent to a POW camp, and they have these records. Well, if they break the record, they can pull out this map. So there's an actual real life event of United States POWs that broke all the records until they found an actual map within the vinyl record. And then they created this airplane out of fucking nothing, and one of the dudes escaped, and he let the United States Army know, of which later on went and saved the rest of the dudes. So art does depict reality, and it does it in so many different ways. When you watch movies like Interstellar, right? And how they're trying to solve certain human problems, and they're like, when he goes and he finally finds NASA again, NASA's like, look, this is the problem we have now. This is the problem that's coming up in 10 years. This is the problem that we're going to face. Most likely, your children are going to be the last generation on this planet, right? When you talk, if I go back to like Logan, there's a part in Logan, when the horses go crazy, and then he meets that guy, and then he goes to the family, and he goes, what do you do? And he goes, well, I raise crops. And he goes, they put this shit in everything, man, from from sports drinks to cereals to whatever, right? And it turns out that they're stopping mutants from becoming mutants through everyday consumables. You don't think there's a reality in that? I'll give you this weird example of like, this is what I despise about people, right? Like in California, years ago, we had this vote on the ballot, and the ballot was about all GMO foods, all genetically modified foods. They should be labeled genetically modified, because it could be genetically modified and it could be organic. You won't know, right? Because organic is something else to genetically modified. And the counter argument to that was that it's going to cost about $500 million for all the labels to be relabeled. But they left out the part that it's not like that's tax money. That's all these companies. They got to relabel their products, their current products. They just got to relabel them. And from then on, everything needs to be marked as GMO. Well, guess what these genius people in California did? They voted against it. And until today, none of these companies are obligated to write that the food we consume are genetically modified. It's fucking crazy, man. It's fucking crazy. If you watch the movie Looper, not Loopers, about like the assassin, where, you know, the mob is sending people from the future to the past, and then they kill the dudes so that they can't track the body, because in the future, I guess they can track everybody's body. There's some type of chipped in some way. Like, you can't just get rid of a body, but if you send them to the past, they disappear, right? Well, there's a reality in that, right? And then, if you notice the vehicles they drive, they're driving, and around their vehicles is a nozzle, like a gas pump nozzle, that's connected into the gas tank, and it goes around the car and most likely to the engine. And what that's signifying is that it's recycling the fuel. Now, most people don't realize that the vehicles we drive, all these shitty cars you see here, I don't care if it's a fucking Ferrari, it's a Porsche, it's a whatever, all these shitty cars, right? When you put gasoline in it, you're only burning 25 to 35, maximum 35% of the fuel. So roughly 75% of that fuel comes out as dirty black exhaust. But why doesn't it come out as dirty black exhaust? Because you have a catalytic converter that burns all those chemicals and all that fuel. So your catalytic converter burns 75% of your fuel while your engine burns 25%. The best engines we have today are Formula One engines, and they break just 50%, just barely 50% of the fuel that's inside the car they burn. Some dude in the 60s figured out, you know what, let's just take the exhaust and loop it back into the intake of the car and reburn whatever hasn't burned yet. Well, the story goes that Dodge bought that patent and shelved it. So in this movie Looper, it's hinting to that it's the future, gas prices are expensive, so they figured out a way to save some money on gasoline. There's an old movie called The $100 Computer. So this movie, I believe it was a 90s movie. This is during the time when if you bought a regular computer, a desktop, it cost you about like at least $1,000. That was for a shitty one. If you wanted a good desktop computer, it cost you around $2,000, which was not cheap in the 90s, right? If you bought a laptop was $2,000 to $4,000. So in the 90s, you know, they made this movie of these dudes trying to create this $100 computer. And what they figured out is, okay, let's get rid of everything that we can get rid of, right? So they're like, okay, the memory, you know what? Let's throw it on a cloud. The screen alone is more than $100 at that time, right? So they took an army projector, not just a projector, but a holographic projector. And they're like, we'll get rid of the mouse, the keypad, everything. And what you'll do is, and using the projector, you'll just click the things you want in a three-dimensional form. You'll use your computer just like that. So all the memory is stored in a cloud. All you do is just power it up and it projects the information. All your information is saved on a cloud. This is way before the cloud existed. All right, way before the cloud existed. There was no fucking cloud back then. Projectors or holographic projectors, like until today, we still find holographic projectors. Like there are these amazing things that they still haven't given to us. But you can Google YouTube and Google a whole bunch of stuff where we got projectors. Like they're showing entire whales to kids, right? Like they're projecting three-dimensional. So why haven't we got this information? It's in all the movies, all these sci-fi movies. They all have it. Well, maybe because it's national security, because the military is using it for something to kill people rather than for you to watch your porno on. Right? I mean, fucking hey, it's gonna beat like Saved by the Bell. Right? So, but my point is, there's a major reality in all these fucking movies, man. It's crazy when you talk about like I don't care what movie you pull up. I'll show you some reality in it that's like, holy shit, I never really thought of it that way, right? When you talk about like movies like just pulling rabbits out of hats, right? Like the Hulk. Okay, Hulk was pretty much a dude that his dad took a whole bunch of animals, spliced them together, and then they created him, and he gets mad and turns into the Hulk. So he gets mad, turns into the Hulk is the dramatization and it's the symbolism, right? But you think we haven't spliced a whole bunch of animals into random fucking people? In laboratories and shit? If you think we haven't done that, you live you live under a rock. You know, like the Nazis were not the only ones doing human experimentation. You know, we did human experimentation on our own soldiers. Dude, we did human experimentation on our own population. Like the Tuskegee experiments. Right? So, I hope you're with me on this shit, man. I know I'm putting on the tinfoil hat and presenting it in a certain way, but I need you guys to understand, like, media is the fourth branch of government. When it wants to communicate something, it does it through media. Nobody reads books no more. Nobody. It's something like 10% of the population reads books, right? Now, take away all the perverted books, take away all the fiction, all the bullshit. What's the percentage of the population that actually reads books that matter? And what do I mean by books that matter? Books that actually make a change in your life for the better. They teach you new knowledge, more information, right? Who goes and buys, like, you know what, I never learned physics, so I'm gonna go buy Physics 101 book. What's the percentage of, bro, that percentage is less than 1%. Therefore, all this information, if we really want to get it to the population, we have to do it through media. We have to do it through YouTube, and we have to do it through movies, and we have to do it through music, and we have to do it through social networks and all this stuff, right? But most of these social networks, like a lot of them, they're not even American. You know, we might have an interest in it, but we're not in control of those algorithms, you know? Google we are. I think YouTube we are, meaning the United States. But in terms of like TikTok and all that, I think TikTok is owned by China. You're stuck with their propaganda and their bullshit, right? That's why like if you're on anything like Instagram or Twitter or anything like that, man, it's like you're gonna run into 50 retarded videos. A cat makes you laugh, some guy is drilling a hole with his drill, all this shit, and then you'll get one video that has some type of merit or quality behind it. So they're basically feeding all this fucking trash into your head, and then, you know, you get the bonus once in a while of something that actually means something, you know? I'd love to hear your opinions, man, on what movies do you think depict a reality. Another one I'll say off the top of my head is The Santa Claus, with the dude from Home Improvement. When he reads when Santa falls off his roof and dies, and then he picks up the business card and reads it, and then when he finally goes to the North Pole, and the main elf puts the business card under the microscope, and then you see micro text, and it goes, well, this is the Santa Claus like the end of a contract clause. And he's reading all the micro text, and it says, as soon as you put on the uniform, you are Santa, right? So in the world we live in today, there's a lot of micro text, including, you know, when they say sign the dotted line, well, that's reality. It's a dotted line because it's micro text. Most people don't know that it's micro text. If you were to take your a magnifying glass or even your phone and zoom in on a check, you know, where you sign on the dotted line, well, it's words. I think it's one word repeated over and over, but it's a clause. That's the end of the contract. That's why you sign it. So I'd love to hear your opinions, your views, and things you've noticed, and you're like, fucking hey, you know what, man, that kind of hits reality. It's more than just a movie. Even though I'm watching a drama, or it's supposed to be sci-fi or fiction or whatever, there's a real sense of them showing me something real here, right? I'd love to hear yours. So Solo Yolo Bolo, I hope you stuck with me on this one. Peace.